High level, what is GPT-4? How does it work, and what to you is most amazing about it?
It's a system that we'll look back at and say was a very early AI. And it's slow, it's buggy, it doesn't do a lot of things very well, but neither did the very earliest computers. And they still pointed a path to something that was going to be really important in our lives, even though it took a few decades to evolve.
Do you think this is a pivotal moment? Like out of all the versions of GPT 50 years from now, when they look back on an early system that was really kind of a leap, in a Wikipedia page about the history of artificial intelligence, which of the GPTs would they put?
That is a good question. I sort of think of progress as this continual exponential. It's not like we could say here was the moment where AI went from not happening to happening. And I'd have a very hard time pinpointing a single thing. I think it's this very continual curve. Will the history books write about GPT 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 7? That's for them to decide. I don't really know. I think if I had to pick some moment from what we've seen so far, I'd sort of pick ChatGPT. It wasn't the underlying model that mattered. It was the usability of it, both the RLHF and the interface to it.
What is ChatGPT? What is RLHF? Reinforcement learning with human feedback. What was that little magic ingredient to the dish that made it so much more delicious?
So we trained these models on a lot of text data. And in that process, they learn the underlying something about the underlying representations of what's in here or in there. And they can do amazing things. But when you first play with that base model that we call it after you finish training, it can do very well on evals. It can pass tests. It can do a lot of, there's knowledge in there. But it's not very useful, or at least it's not easy to use, let's say. And RLHF is how we take some human feedback. The simplest version of this is show two outputs, ask which one is better than the other, which one the human raters prefer, and then feed that back into the model with reinforcement learning. And that process works remarkably well with, in my opinion, remarkably little data to make the model more useful. So RLHF is how we align the model to what humans want it to do.
So there's a giant language model that's trained on a giant data set to create this kind of background wisdom knowledge that's contained within the internet. And then somehow adding a little bit of human guidance on top of it through this process makes it seem so much more awesome.
Maybe just because it's much easier to use. It's much easier to get what you want. You get it right more often the first time, and ease of use matters a lot, even if the base capability was there before.
And like a feeling like it understood the question you were asking, or like it feels like you're kind of on the same page.
It's trying to help you.
It's the feeling of alignment.
Yes.
I mean, that could be a more technical term for it. And you're saying that not much data is required for that. Not much human supervision is required for that.
To be fair, we understand the science of this part at a much earlier stage than we do the science of creating these large pre-trained models in the first place. But yes, less data, much less data.
That's so interesting. The science of human guidance. That's a very interesting science. And it's going to be a very important science to understand how to make it usable, how to make it wise, how to make it ethical, how to make it aligned in terms of all the kind of stuff we think about. And it matters which are the humans and what is the process of incorporating that human feedback, and what are you asking the humans? Is it two things? Are you asking them to rank things? What aspects are you asking the humans to focus in on? It's really fascinating. But